boys should go pee-pee in the boys' room and girls should go pee-pee in the girls' room.
I'm white, and I've got everything I need. No one clutches their purses when they're in a room alone with me. And I can drive for any neighborhood I please at any hour, and the police don't do a thing. So if I see a penny on the ground, I leave it alone and fucking flip it. I'm a straight white male in America. I got everything I need. I'm a guy getting paid more than a girl with a degree. And I can walk down the streets after dark, no one wants to rape me. And I can get a girl pregnant and just as easily flee. Just like my straight white male dad did to me. So if I see a penny on the ground, I leave it alone and fucking flip it. I'm a straight white male in America. I've got all the luck I need. I've got a pile of broken mirrors and I'm walking under ladders and I'm spilling tons of salt, but to me that doesn't matter, cause my skin and my gender and my orientation are the best things to have if you live in this nation. I recommend it highly. If I see a penny on the ground, I leave it alone and fucking flip it. I'm a straight white male in America. I've got all the luck I need. Shit's gonna work out for me, cause I'm a straight white male in America. I've got all the luck I need.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Intellectual Dollar Tree. We do the show live every Wednesday, 7 p.m. Pacific, right here on Twitch. That's twitch.tv/Echoplex Media. This is listener, viewer supported programming. So I don't know, give us money, whatever way you see fit. You can find information about that at echoplexmedia.com. I am producer Dave, and you can find me on Grindr.
And I'm HK Perrin. You can find me on Mastodon at hperrin@port87.social.
So I think we've done this guy before, but not very often. What do you know about Jonathan Haidt?
Very little. The name sounds familiar. That's about it.
He's one of these sort of heterodox thinkers. I think when we watched him before, he was talking with somebody about heritability, which is generally just race and IQ, right? Like,
yep.
His latest thing has been that he's been going around being some kind of expert on how social media affects children, which, I mean, whatever. I don't know how you become an expert in that, so I'm not going to say whether or not he knows. But if he was like really interested in these kinds of things and having like good, interesting discussions about how it's all shaking out, he wouldn't go on Triggernometry.
No, he wouldn't.
So that's where he's decided to take his expertise, though, is Triggernometry. So.
Can I just say before we start, I see in your recommendations there's a song from a Healthy Gamer called The Dark Side of Meditation. If that is not a video about Sam Harris, I would be so disappointed.
So that's not a song.
Huh?
You said there's a song by Healthy Gamer. That's 2 hours. That better not be a song.
Oh, a video. Yeah. If that's not a video about Sam Harris, I'd be so disappointed.
Well, I know
he is the dark side of meditation.
I know what we're watching for part of the post game. Anyway, here's Jonathan Haidt on Triggernometry.
Talking about really is civilizational collapse.
So we're not going to burn the technology. We need to delay it. You know, we can't be raising.
They changed their setup.
This stuff is not suitable for children.
They might be on the go.
14, 15-year-olds? No. Just get rid of all of it. What we're doing to kids in preventing them from developing executive function is going to hurt them for the rest of their lives. So I think we will see a permanent effect on Gen Z.
That's a tragedy, John.
Oh, this is the greatest destruction of human capital in human history.
Jonathan Haidt.
Human capital?
A long time us trying to make this happen. You're
such a disgusting way to talk about children.
Books which really describe
or adults
what's happening in modern society.
Yeah.
Your latest one, The Anxious Generation, is talking about something that is crucial to the future, I think. Tell us, what do you see, why you wrote it, what are your concerns, and what are some of the solutions?
Sure. Well, first, Constantine and Francis, thanks so much for having me on. Yes, I've blown you off for years, but I've blown off everybody for years because it's like, how do you get time to write a book when you have a full life? And so I had to be very rude to everyone, but here's my baby, it came out. Now, what is it? In a sense, it's a follow-on to The Coddling the American Mind in that book, Greg Lukianoff and I talked about how something really weird happened around 2014 or so, 2013, 2014. Greg first noticed it. And it felt to me kind of like a glitch in the matrix, like something changed right around 2014. We saw it in college students. They were very different than they were in 2012. And that's where you start getting the shout downs and the fragility and the claims. About
What?
This is, I'm just going to guess here, give my prediction that this is going to be a video about, the rates of depression among the youth are on the rise, and the culprit must be screens, evil social media. It couldn't possibly be, the dismal state of affairs in the world, and particularly in the U.S.
Right.
No, it's social media.
It's really interesting that he says that he noticed this big difference between college students between 2012 and 2014. It's like a very specific range of time for something so drastic to have changed. I don't know if there's maybe an event that he's talking about here that happened, maybe something specific happened where people told him to go fuck himself in 2014. I don't know for sure here.
We have to stop this person, not because they're unjust.
And to be clear, I do think social media can be a contributing factor to that, but it is absolutely not the only thing wrong that is leading to the rise in depression among the younger generations.
It was new. And at first we thought it was something about college students. And then we talked in the coddling about overprotection. We have a lot on the importance of free play, being unsupervised. So we have a whole part of the story there. And we have just 3 paragraphs of speculation that, social media might have contributed to this too, because the timing is right. And, if you're born in 1996, beginning of Gen Z, you went through, you got Facebook when you were a kid and Instagram when you were going through puberty. So the timing is right, but we don't know. The data is not clear. So that was 2017 that we wrote that book. And then things just get worse and worse on university campuses. But also it becomes clear it's not just college students. It becomes very, very clear it's everyone. It's everyone born after 1996. And especially once it became clear that it wasn't just the U.S. It was exactly.
So this is just some get off my lawn bullshit with fucking academic window dressing. Kids these days, they're weirdos.
Yep.
In Canada, the UK, Australia, we have more recent data. It's the Nordic countries as well. In all of them, we see a very sudden shift in the early 2010s. It really is like a glitch in the matrix. And I argue in the book here that what it is there was a great rewiring of childhood that happened in those years. In 2010, almost all kids had a flip phone. The iPhone was just coming in, but it wasn't that popular. There weren't that many apps. It wasn't.
So by 2010, the iPhone was wildly popular. This guy's incorrect.
No, by 2007, a month after it came out, it was widely popular.
Right. By 2008 or 2009, the first Android that was the Moto Droid had come out that was just basically a fucking ripoff of the iPhone. Well, to be fair, that operating system had existed before Google bought it from somebody else. It was.
Yes, but it was entirely different before the iPhone. I don't know if you've seen the early models of Android phones. It basically looked like a BlackBerry phone.
Yeah.
It was a clone of a BlackBerry. And then the iPhone came out and Google was like, oh shit. Redo, and then they cloned the iPhone.
Yeah. It was going to happen anyway. A bunch of icons on the screen of your phone was bound to happen anyway. So
that happened back with the Palm Pilot in 1996, I want to say. And the iPhone was basically a clone of Palm OS.
Well, everything's always iterative anyway. But the fundamental thing he's saying here, yeah, maybe most kids at a public university didn't have an iPhone, but a lot of them did.
Social media wasn't on it. So in 2010, almost all kids have a flip phone or other dumb phone. There's no front-facing camera. There's no high-speed internet. You have to pay for every text you send. So you can't.
There's no 3G was out by 2010.
Yeah, with 3G though, you couldn't stream video. So I think what he's saying is high speed enough that you could, upload and stream video.
Not spend your whole life. In 2010, teenagers are not spending their whole life on their phones. They're using it as a tool to connect and get together later. That's fine. That's normal childhood. By 2015, everyone's got a smartphone, front-facing camera, Instagram on the phone. We've got a lot of high-speed internet. You don't pay for texts anymore. So now, and there's so much going on. So the phone now becomes an experience blocker. And all the experiences that a kid needs, blocked out by this. That's why kids born after 1996, or after 1995, are just really different from those born just a few years earlier. On average, obviously there are exceptions, but on average. That's what the book is about.
What does he mean by really different, though? Kids aren't that different.
And like, I don't know, I interact with some young people, and I think like I don't know, people in their early 20s that I've met, some of them don't use any of this shit, actually. Some of them are like, fuck all that. Fuck that boomer shit. I'm not installing all this crap on my phone. When it texts me, here's my number.
Yeah, but like, I was once a young people, so I remember like in my college years was when all this was happening, in like the early 2010s, and like I would say it didn't get really toxic on social media until like the late 2010s. And that's when, what he's talking about, I think what he's talking about is like although I could be wrong here because he hasn't mentioned it, the internal studies by Facebook of basically when like a teenage girl goes on Instagram, she'll generally feel worse about herself after browsing Instagram for like 10 minutes than she did before. And yeah, Facebook did these studies, learned this, and then hid it from the public and, didn't do anything about it. They were like, yeah, our product hurts children. That's cool.
What do we do now?
And I suppose the question is, given that all of this technology is here, we're not going to be able to Luddite our way out of it. We're not going to be able to smash them to pieces and whatever. So I guess it's a question of how do we manage this? How do we deal with the reality of modern technology, which, by the way, seems to me to be only going to accelerating from here.
That's right. So I have
technology is improving. Shocker.
Have Peter Thiel on; he'll disabuse you of that notion.
Every day I get emails from somebody who has an app or a website or something that's going to address the problem, and I don't even read them anymore. I just send them to this inbox, and maybe someday someone will look at them.
Ideally, we do have ways to solve the problem already built into the phones. There's like parental controls on the phones where you can tell it like, unless this passcode is entered, you just can't open this app for more than like X number of minutes a day.
Take the 9 or 10 hours a day that kids are spending on their phones. There is no way to make that nicer.
But yeah, at that point, that's a parenting problem. That's not a problem of the technology.
And I don't even read them anymore. I just send them to this inbox, and maybe someday someone will look at them. I've come to the opinion that there is no way to make the 9 or 10 hours a day that kids are spending on their phones, there is no way to make that nicer and safer. We're not going to smash the technology, but you know what? We can delay it. When cars came out, they were amazing, and a lot of people died in them. A lot of children died in them. And eventually, we kind of realized we need safety features in the car. And you know what? You have to be 16 to drive. We're not going to let a 12-year-old drive a car.
You know what's funny is that back in like 2002, I was spending like 8 or 9 hours a day in front of a screen. And at that point, it was like AIM. Do you remember AIM?
I do.
Yeah. So like that's the level of like communications technology that I had. But admittedly, yeah, it wasn't on my phone. But what I did was I just like learned how to code, learn stuff. I went on like, coding websites and learned about that. I went on like Wikipedia and read about stuff. There's ways that you can use this technology that's beneficial. I feel like a lot of people just don't bother to actually put in the time to like try to make these devices safe for kids. You know what I mean?
Yes, I do.
The tools are there.
And a lot of people died in them. A lot of children died in them. And eventually, we kind of realized we need safety features in the car. And you know what? You have to be 16 to drive. We're not going to let a 12-year-old drive a car. And I think the same thing, we're going to come to that realization.
Except if you work on a farm.
Social media in particular, possibly smartphones. I just got back from the UK, and all the talk is, let's ban smartphones. Let's not let kids under 14 own a smartphone or not let them be sold. As an American, I'm not very fond of bans, but
Wait, what? He just said that we fixed the fucking car problem by not letting anybody under 16 drive. He's like, but as an American, I'm not really fan of, like, yeah, we've actually banned cars for people under 16, which he says is good, but I'm not a fan of bans. What the fuck is he talking about?
America bans stuff all the time.
And I don't know. I mean, like, you're not supposed to technically be accessing these websites till you're 13, which I think is too low. Probably, but like, I don't know how you would ban it, but because your parents buy the phone for you, right? And so I think it's not that it would be bad to stop people under 14 or under 16 from having a phone. It's just that you can't do it.
I think we could try.
Well, no, you can't.
I actually
it's
wouldn't
functionally
mind
impossible.
seeing like
It's functionally. How would you enforce such a ban?
Just don't sell. Like if you're selling a phone, I mean, we already have laws about like getting the identity of whoever owns the phone or whoever uses the phone, right? So when you're on your parents' family plan, they know the identity of each person who's on the plan using the phone. So they're going to know that, like, okay, this person is, 13 years old, 12 years old, whatever. So like they could say, we could pass a law that says like you can't sell someone a phone to give to a kid unless it's like a dumb phone, which I would actually like that approach. Like you said, there's no, like, you can just buy a phone retail and give it to them. So there's not really any way to like strictly enforce that, but trying something is better than doing nothing, I think.
Maybe. I just don't. I think it's just not going to work. Mom and dad want the kid to have a smartphone, then the kid's going to have a smartphone.
Yeah, but you could say the same thing about like alcohol. And It probably shouldn't be legal for a kid to go into a 7-Eleven and buy a 6-pack of beer.
The norm needs to be, you know what? We're biological creatures. We're mammals. We have an evolutionary program called childhood. We have to let that unfold. Kids have to spend enormous amounts of time playing with each other, hanging out, teasing each other, unsupervised. No adult coming and saying, no, don't say that. Oh no, you go sit in the, just let
Wait, what?
it out. Obviously.
No, if your kid has a bunch of their friends over, you are legally obligated to supervise them as a parent. You are legally responsible for those other parents' children in a variety of ways that you can get in really deep shit for if you're not fucking supervising that in some way.
Yeah, I don't think either of us are with him on this point.
Now, mind you shouldn't be like micromanaging your kids' play and whatever, but that's a very different like scenario than kind of keeping an ear out for fucking the kids fighting or fucking, I don't know, doing any number of things that the other parents might be like, I don't know about that.
Yeah.
There are cases of bullying. We have to attend to that. But other than those limited cases, let kids work it out. Let them get most of the way through puberty. This is a key idea in the book. I really came to see that puberty is this incredibly important period where the whole brain is rewiring from the child form to the adult form, and it happens in stages from back to front, more or less. The last part to rewire is the prefrontal cortex. And this is happening, around 13 to 16 in that period. And it continues on to 25. But it's completely insane that when puberty starts, which is around 11 or 12 for girls and around 13 or 14 for boys, when puberty starts is basically when we give them a phone and say, how about no more real world experience? How about you spend 10 hours a day on this thing? And your brain isn't going to, neural rewiring is this incredibly complex dance. And just as if we gave our kids alcohol every hour, that would disrupt neural growth. Well, I would say giving them 4 hours a day of video games for the boys or 5 hours a day of video games for the girls It's going to disrupt neural growth.
Wait, no, that's just a normal amount of time that a kid might come home. Like, nobody was freaking out about kids playing fucking Mario Kart for 4 hours.
Oh, a lot of people were freaking out about that.
Right, but the problem with video games isn't that somebody sometimes plays 4 hours of video games after school and then maybe is up too late doing their homework and doesn't get enough sleep. The problem with video games is they go into like the chat rooms on video games and hear racial slurs. Like,
yeah,
and there are people that will play video games from the time they get off school to the time they go to sleep, and that's like really bad too, because they're not doing their homework, not interacting with their family, not really interacting with friends in real life. Like, this stuff is real, but the way this guy talks about it seems like sort of disconnected from the experience of like, and again, I don't know any teenagers, right? But it just seems disconnected from the experience of like young people.
Yeah.
You know, and this is anecdotal, but I was a teacher for many years, and everyone's going to drink because it's now become a hack comment on this podcast from me. But one of the things that I noticed, because I was a drama teacher, and a lot of drama teaching in the UK is you give children a set of stimulus, and then they create their own plays, improvised plays around the stimulus. And I remember talking with the drama teachers halfway into my career, and we were going, I think kids are becoming less imaginative.
What year was this around? What?
This was around 2015,
Okay,
2016.
yeah, that's it. That
And
would
we
be it.
started to notice that the quality of work that the kids were doing was degrading.
What?
There's a lot going on there. The one thing I can say was
Kids are becoming less imaginative. No, this is just old man shit right here.
Yeah, this is get off my fucking lawn. Like, what might have happened is there might have been like a couple years where before that, right? Or it could have been that he was getting bored with his job too, right? Like,
Yeah, maybe he's just a bad teacher.
Could be any number of things, or maybe he came off of a couple years where the classes he had were full of like really imaginative kids who were into drama, and then like for a couple years the maybe ebbs and flows a little bit, and sometimes you get classes full of teenagers or whatever who aren't really that into improv or whatever. Maybe who knows? Maybe like all the gay kids figured out that they should go to drama class to find the other gay kids so they could find a date. So they weren't even really there to to do drama so much as to get laid. I don't know.
attention. This is very general. The ability, so the one thing the prefrontal cortex does is called executive function. It's the ability to make a plan, say, like this morning, I said, okay, I would need to be here at 9:30, and I thought about the different methods, and I made a plan, and then I stuck to the plan because I have a normal prefrontal cortex.
Man, fucking Constantine and Non Oliver are bad enough, but like fucking right after you wake up talking to them, holy crap.
And if you disrupt that, if you're constantly in the early teen years, if you're constantly being divided, you have all kinds of stuff coming in, that part doesn't develop as well. So this is one of the most common comments we hear.
That's a fucking pretty big claim that I'm not sure that because this phenomenon is so new, I'm not sure that we have enough body of research to fucking say that that's true.
Yeah.
Difficult for them to stay on task. In fact, their brains have become accustomed to such a constant incoming stream of information that a lot of them have trouble watching a video because it's not enough stimulation. So they do this thing. They
do this thing. It's called gooning.
And people have sent me these things. There's like a video of me giving a talk, and underneath it is a video of a video game going on. Yeah. They need two things at once. Where if they're at the computer, they need the phone as well. And so this is inhuman. This is what we're doing to kids in preventing them from developing executive function is going to hurt them for the rest of their lives.
I mean, that is probably more that your talk was incredibly boring.
Yeah, and he's like misunderstanding like the point of like a video game stream, right? Like you're the person playing the game, you're going to be interacting with them and talking to them about the game, right? So like this isn't really even an analog to the thing that he thinks he's comparing it to.
But I have seen like this concept of like people having a video where they're talking in the main part of the screen, and then there's like a smaller part that's just doing like a mobile game or Minecraft or something, and that's more about like just sitting watching a person talk is incredibly boring. So like if you want someone to pay attention to a boring video, yeah, you'll probably need some sort of like visual aid, like a PowerPoint, I would say. Like, you know how like when you go into an office meeting and like there's a person standing in the front talking and you're just like staring at the DVD logo bouncing on the screen or something, you know? Or like if they have a PowerPoint with animations, you're just like watching the animations going. It's like that exists in practically every human being. Like that is not new. That is just being exploited in this new style of video.
That's quite possible. I haven't studied that. I don't have like a specific mechanism.
In fact, way back in gosh, I think like 2007, there was literally a scene in The Office about that, where they were standing there listening to Michael talk, and next to him was a TV with the DVD logo bouncing, and they're all watching and waiting for it to go into the corner. So like this has existed for about as long as like humans have been able to make animations and play them next to each other while talking.
For the rest of their lives. So that's a very general comment. Now, as for creativity, that's quite possible. I haven't studied that. I don't have like a specific mechanism. But in general, you know, creativity requires you take in a lot of stuff and you put out stuff, and then you get criticism. So you've got to have this back and forth with the world to be creative. But now that kids are basically taking in gigabyte, I mean, you know, 10, 50 times as much stuff as we did when we were young, the stuff is coming in, not a lot is coming out. And they're not doing a lot of writing. They're not writing books. They're not starting companies even. They're taking in so much stuff. So I'm guessing.
Is he saying that like fucking teenagers that are fucking teenagers are not writing books or starting companies? Well, that's okay, dude.
That is literally what he said. Yeah.
Yo, if a teenager like writes a book or starts a company, that gets on the local news. It always has.
Yeah.
This is a very unusual thing for a teenager to do.
Yeah.
Speculating, but that might be part of why you'd see a reduction in creative production.
And what was interesting as well is that towards the end of my time in education, I noticed that there were...
Can you name a time where like a majority of media or even like a large portion of media was produced by children? Time in history?
I think at this time in history, there's more media being produced by people under 18 as a percentage of all media, like if you include YouTube and TikTok or whatever, than ever, actually.
Okay. So it's actually going the other way than what he's saying.
I think so, yeah.
Okay.
See a reduction in creative production.
And what was interesting as well is that towards the end of my time in education, I noticed that there were far more arguments, there were far more fights between kids because their social skills had diminished. So they couldn't find a way to negotiate conflict. And
I'm sorry, there are more fights between kids than there were in the past? What?
I think, again, I mean, these things might, like, because he's just talking about his personal experience, right? Like at any given school, these things might just ebb and flow. There might just be a year at a school where there's just a lot of fights because maybe the fucking some shit happened in the junior class or whatever, right? Where like two groups of kids, I mean, it's not gang activity or whatever, but two different groups of kids are now in conflict, or two very popular kids are having a conflict and people are kind of lining up in ways around that, or, you know, any number of things could be causing this. But it's like a flash. It might be a flash in the pan. It might be part of starting a larger trend, but this is just him talking about what he saw toward the end of his time in education. And maybe he was like oversampling for it and thinking that it was happening more and more and more because he wanted out, because he was unsatisfied with his job. And so if you're unsatisfied with your job or whatever, you're going to start seeing the bad parts of your job more often, or leaning into the bad parts of your job more often. So I don't really care like what non-Oliver particularly experienced as a teacher. I'm just glad that he's not a teacher anymore.
Yep.
I don't think it is. I genuinely don't think they know how to communicate effectively.
That's right. So what, you know, we need to develop one-on-one communication skills.
As opposed to kids in the 50s who were communicating very effectively.
I had to deal with this question of, well, you know, aren't they playing online? Isn't that just as good? Aren't they socializing online? Like, what about a kid who's isolated? Here he has lots of friends. Isn't that just as good? And what I realized in writing the book is, no, actually there are 4 ways in which online interaction are not as good, or very different. So the first is that real life is embodied. And just what we're doing now, just like the rules of, like you guys are looking straight at me because I'm talking. But if I were to look straight at you while I was talking, that would be it's kind of weird because you don't do that.
Wait, what?
So you have to work out rules of eye contact. And we're all communicating with...
Is that the rules of eye contact, that I'm not supposed to look at you while I'm talking, but that as soon as you start talking, I'm supposed to start looking at you? Is that like that? I've never paid any attention to this, but...
That's not any rule that I know. I look at you when I talk.
I think that
I look at anyone when I talk to them.
I think that different people have different eye contact patterns, and once you know somebody, you might know that they're looking off to the right a little bit, but I don't know. That's maybe that. Oh shit, they're listening. Oh, that's what when they're actually listening to me, they're kind of just fucking staring off into space and listening to me. It's like,
maybe he learned social interaction from like Days of Our Lives and All My Children, where like, you'd have a conversation at the camera when the person you're talking to was like standing behind you.
Yeah. Or maybe it was just the classic, mom gets mad. Mom's like, look at me when I'm talking to you. Don't look at me like that.
Like our head movements are a very important part. So anyway, there's all these nonverbal channels. Online, you get emojis and you get a lot of uncertainty. You say something, you don't know how it landed, and you're anxious until they respond. So it's embodied. Real life is synchronous. Right now we have instant, really rapid back and forth.
But like that's how notes were in like school, right?
You'd pass notes, yeah.
Yeah, you'd write a note and someone could take it the wrong way. Like this existed before like the internet.
Fuck, you could say something to somebody right in front of them, have them take it the wrong way. You think it's a joke and they punch you in the face. Like,
yeah, like miscommunication has been a thing since communication has been a thing.
Zoom call or in some video games, you have that. So some parts of the virtual world are synchronous, but most are not. It's text-based. I say something, you misinterpret it, and then you tell other people. And we lose that connection.
Or if that's like your friend and you text them a lot, you're like, what do you mean?
Yeah.
Huh?
WYM.
Yeah. Excuse you?
The third is that real life interactions are mostly one-to-one, or in this case, one-to-two, one to a few. You hang out with a group of friends. But once it becomes like a group text, where a kid...
but what if your group text only has a few of your friends in it, you dumb motherfucker? Like, come on, dude. The only group text I even look at generally, well, I guess it's I guess we could call the back of house Discord like a group text, essentially, right?
Yeah.
There's like a dozen people in there, but nobody's talking.
80 kids, like the whole class is on this group text. It's not playful anymore. It's performative and it's anxiety provoking. Because you make one misstep and your reputation is trashed. So it's scary. It's anxiety provoking.
Well, don't get in a group text with 80 people from your high school. That sounds like a recipe. Like this is like actually, this would be something that if I was like advising a young person about, I might be like, hey, don't get in a big group text with a bunch of people. If you start a group text, start it with a couple of your homies. Like if the class has a group text, avoid that shit like the plague.
Yeah, but also like this too existed all throughout school. If you make a fool of yourself in front of the class, it damages your reputation.
Or if you
I should know.
If you make a fool of yourself in front of the class, it better be funny, right?
Yeah.
It better be funny enough that it doesn't matter.
Yeah, like this is all like everything he's complaining about. There are analogs to this in the pre-digital world. Like I just don't see how any of this is novel.
The only thing
it's just digitized. It's not novel.
The only thing I guess about a group, like if you do something stupid in class, it's ephemeral, right? Like tomorrow you're not still doing that thing, right? Yeah, that's the only way it's different. But everybody's going to remember it, and they're going to
They might even embellish the story a little when they tell it.
By next week, Scotty Snot Rocket sneezed and just everybody was covered with his boogers, right?
Yep.
Did I say Scotty Snot Rocket or Snotty Scott Rocket? Oh, Snotty Scott Rocket is a better name.
And then the final one is that real life communities in general are durable. Whereas online communities are evanescent. Maybe there's 500 people in a group, And most will be gone by tomorrow. Almost nobody's going to be there a year from now. So kids need to be rooted in permanent communities. This is part of the human developmental plan. And in the online world, they just dip their toe into hundreds of little things.
But then he was just talking about all the kids in the class being in a group text. But that's an extension of a real community of real people who have to deal with each other. You know what I'm saying? It's just a way. Hopeful. I mean, if all your class was in a group text and all it was people like sharing information, like if you were sick or whatever, right? You go, oh, fuck, I was sick. Let me check the group chat to see and be like, hey, I was sick today. Anything I need to know from class today? Can anybody share their notes with me? Boom. Now you're using it well. I understand what he's talking about here is that if you're in this group text with everybody from your school, well, then they're just, if you're popular, you're just going to be more popular now because you're popular in the group chat too. And if you're getting bullied, you're just going to keep getting bullied in the group text. But it's like this now, but now he's talking about something else where you have these like ephemeral online communities. Like people come and go from our Discord all the time, right? People come and go from the chat for our show all the time. Otherwise, we'd have a giant audience because all 5,400 and whatever people that follow this channel would just be here every night. But like that's the same as like a community where you all go to concerts or you all go to raves or you all go do something. Not everyone's going to show up every time, and over time, if you're like really interested in going to like dance music events, the group of people you go with, if you're the one that's just interested in making sure everybody knows everything about the event, making sure they have the info line number or whatever, then the group of people you're going with in 6 months is going to look different than the group of people you're going with now, just because people are going to lose interest. They're going to get a job where they got to work early. Somebody's going to move. Somebody's going to be like, oh, I'm doing too much Molly. I can't go to that shit anymore. You know, there's going to be people are going to have breakups where they don't want to go where their ex is. Like there's any number of things that are going to happen. It's just that it's happening in real life and it's around an event. But it happens in much the same way that it would happen in a group chat or like a Discord server that you have for your friends that are interested in a certain video game or whatever.
Yeah, the example I was going to use for saying basically the same thing is like, if you join like your school's, like your little league team, you know, if you're a kid and you join the little league team, that doesn't mean that team is going to be around forever. Like at best, they might last the season.
Yeah.
And like you'll probably miss some games, but like, you know, probably the next season, you know, next school year, that team's going to be completely different if you go back.
Right. Because maybe you're interested in something else now.
Yeah. Like this also is just, he's complaining about digital things that existed before, you know, things that have analog analogs. And I guess the thing that, and he may bring it up, but the thing that's different is the speed at which the speed at which communication happens, and the fact that this group chat is there all the time, right? Like you can send something if you can't sleep, you could send something to the group chat at 2 a.m. and a couple other people in the group chat might be up late. Whereas before you'd have to figure out who was up at 2 a.m. and call and wake their parents, right? Yep. And like you could probably say the same exact things that he's saying about society as soon as the phone was introduced. You know, when everyone first started having a phone in their home, like in the 30s and 40s, maybe as late as the 50s, you know, where everyone has it. You're talking about like going from this world where, like, you know, if you're a kid and you had a friend down the street, you had to walk down the street to go see that friend. And now all of a sudden you can just pick up this device and dial some numbers. I'm sure the parents there were saying like, my kid doesn't want to go out of our house anymore. Like, that's just progress. And it makes me sad because like there are actual legitimate issues about children using social media that this guy is just not even bringing up.
Well, to be fair, we're only 12 minutes into this, but I think, okay. But I do think that the speed of communication is the big difference between like the group chat and like being part of a club or whatever, you know?
Yeah.
Because one of the major reasons why the thing that happens right around 2012, it's not just anxiety shooting up, it's not just depression shooting up, it's the sense of meaninglessness. Mm-hmm. There's all these really sad questions on these surveys.
Ah, yes, teenagers fucking famously always being able to find meaning in life. Did this guy's like not that much older than we are. Didn't he listen to Nirvana?
Oh yeah, he was definitely an angsty teen.
Yeah, teenage angst has paid off well. Now I'm bored and old. Said by a man when he was 25. Like, yo, you could go back to the 50s. There's all this music about, about like being a teenager and not understanding the world. You know, like that song, The Summertime Blues, is about like not knowing what to do with your life during the summer. To the point where he got so fucking bored that he called his congressman, right? Like what am I supposed to do? Yes, this fucking in art and music, like the idea of the wayward teen without any like known purpose in their life is like possibly the oldest trope.
Yep.
The third song ever written was probably written about that.
Yep.
The first two were about putting it in.
I feel like my life has no meaning. Sometimes I think I'm no good at all. There's these really sad questions. And until 2012, the rates of agreement among American high school kids were very, very low. And then all of a sudden, right around 2012, as they move their lives onto the girls' social media, the boys' more video games, as they move their lives into the virtual world, they're lonely and they have a sense of meaninglessness. They're not rooted.
Wait, no. Okay, so wait a minute. These kids were preteens essentially during the financial crisis of 2008. And so they may not have been like so deeply aware of the mechanics of that, but this is going to have some knock-on effects as they enter their, like, as they become 16, 17, are starting to, make the transition from, childhood to adulthood. They went through an economic crisis, and they were born right after another one, and these kids were born right around the time the fucking planes hit the buildings and shit. Like, this was not, listen, I'm sure that there are plenty of people who were born 98, 99, 2000 who have a great life, but also, like, think about what has happened in the world since they were born. Do you think maybe they're going to be a little anxious?
Yep, I was like 13, I think, when 9/11 happened, 13 or 14, and I was like right around the age of 20 when the financial crisis happened, and my parents lost their house. Like, yeah, I totally understand, like, kids having to see. I was lucky enough that I was out of the house. No, I did live with my parents when they lost their house. Yeah, but like, I was at the age where, I was getting ready to, like, quote, leave the nest, unquote. But yeah, a lot of, like, the kids that he's talking about weren't. They were like, a few years younger than me, maybe 10 years younger than me, where they were, kids and preteens when they watched their parents go through this financial crisis. And yeah, that'll fuck someone up.
Right. Because I just, I'm twice as old, I think, as the people he's talking about, right? And the only disasters, like big disasters I remember, like I only remember, like there was a 1989 earthquake. I was 12. But that was localized, right? That was a Bay Area thing. The Challenger blowing up, I don't remember exactly how old I was when that happened, but these are dramatically different things, right? Like a localized earthquake in San Francisco, horrific. It knocked down the fucking approach to the Bay Bridge and many people died. It was horrific. But this is not the same. Like, there wasn't a major, I don't remember there being like a major financial crisis in, like, sure, there were stock market crashes and stuff, but that's different than, for example, the .com bust and then the housing bust, right? That happened within 10 years of each other. Like, these are dramatically different things. And not to mention, like, these young people, as they came of age, as they started to be, like, to the point where they'd, like, pay attention in the news, they learned that, like, my generation and the generations before mine fucked the planet up for them. Like, so they might, like, there's just a lot to worry about and a lot to be anxious about. And not that being, the fact that, like, if you're bullied in high school if you're active on social media, the bullying continues when you get home. That's not untrue, right?
Yeah.
But that's on top of this, like this sort of existential dread that you know, maybe I'm able to cope with because I was older when I started when it started to become apparent that like, is there going to be a next year? Like,
right. And when I was a kid, we had two kinds of drills at school. We had earthquake drills and fire drills. You know, everyone get under your desk and stay quiet, and everyone get out of the building quickly, but you know, carefully. And now, in addition, kids have active shooter drills where like the whole idea is like, oh, there's a gunman in here trying to kill you. You know, you need to, you know, pretend like that because it's quite likely to happen. I was 10 when, I was 11, I think, when Columbine happened. And that was national news for
unimaginable
weeks.
Unimaginable.
Yeah. Like everyone was shocked. And now when there's a school shooting, it's like, you know, it gets talked about for a couple days.
The famous Onion article goes up.
Yep.
We even have like a process, right? The shooting happens, the Onion article that, you know, no way to prevent this says only country where this ever happens.
Yep.
And then the conspiracy, like we even have there's like a predictable news cycle around it now. And that has to have,
then
like,
JD Vance comes out and tells, you know, all the young kids, oh, it's just a fact of life. You just have to get used to being shot once in a while. Like, no. When I was their age, I didn't have to do that.
Right. That's what I'm saying is like this is taking, what he's doing here is taking one factor, and there may be ways in which the bad news travels to the kids in ways that it didn't before because of social media. But if the school shootings were happening in the 80s, it'd just be on the fucking nightly news all the time. The kids would fucking learn about it anyway. They just have to wait till fucking 6 o'clock.
Like, I literally remember watching Columbine happen, like live on the TV in my mom's van. I was sitting in the back of the van watching the TV. It was this CRT TV in the top of the van. I had it on the local news, and my mom was in shopping, and, you know, she came out and she saw what was going on. And like, you know, my parents had to like sit me down and explain some stuff about the world, you know, to this 11-year-old kid who's like about to go into like the kind of school where this happened, you know? So public school in America.
Yeah. And the kids he's talking about just grew up with this as a fact of life. That's having to do active shooter drills is far more traumatizing than seeing somebody more beautiful than you on Instagram.
Yep.
Not that it's great that the kids are exposed to Instagram and all these people that are supposedly living their best lives, boss babe and shit. But like the material conditions that are happening, and this is outside of the economic material conditions too, because things changed a lot for like working families between my generation and the generation he's talking about too. Mm-hmm. Like, my mom didn't have to work. She worked because she wanted to, because she's a fucking software engineer. She's like, no, I'm going to work. She went to work as soon as she could, as soon as she could, you know, justify like leaving me to take care of my sister after school or whatever. And like, but she didn't have to do that. Now, both parents have to work. They just have to.
Yep.
And like, that's fine. But like, and now both parents have to work. You got fucking school shooter drills. Most of both parents have to work. They don't got no nanny or no babysitter, right? Like, kids just go home.
Yep.
Like, the material conditions of the world have changed dramatically, and it's going to change the way people react to stimuli. Or it could just be the phone.
Yeah, just, you know, too many games, too much phone.
So
phone bad.
Why I call it the great rewiring of childhood. And it's become something inhuman, and we have to roll it back.
Just to finish this train of thought, and with my experiences, one thing, again, this is anecdotal, but still I think it's important. So I was in high school. I qualified as a secondary school teacher in 2008. Mm-hmm. And I remember talking to the teachers, and they were saying to me, you know what, Francis, bullying because I always worked in rough, tough schools. They were like, look, these are deprived kids. It's always been a tough environment. But the bullying since Facebook, and I'm not even talking about Instagram or any of the others.
Yeah.
When Facebook came into this school, the bullying got.
The kids today aren't on Facebook. I hate to break it to you,
Well, he's saying in 2008 though. In 2008.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, when Facebook rolled out. And that is the one thing, and that's funny that Francis brought this up, but not the fucking non-Oliver brought up the fucking one of the real bad things about it that I had mentioned earlier. And the expert didn't say this. That, if you're getting bullied and you're online, you might be in a Discord group with some of the kids from your school, any number of things. The bullying can follow you home now, and that sucks.
Yep. Yeah.
But it's funny that the dumbest person, I don't know, maybe Francis is the smartest of these three people. Who fucking knows? But the one who's like portrayed it on this as the least expert on anything is the one who's like, well, here's part of it that sucks. Good job, non-Oliver. You actually brought up something very important that has changed dramatically. Thank you.
Yeah.
Your point, I remember when I was a form tutor being handed printouts from parents of messages these kids were sending to each other. It was vile.
Yeah.
Utterly, utterly vile. And you just go, this is incentivizing this type of behavior, because you can just say these things and there's going to be little to no pushback.
That's right. And you say them to get the prestige, where you'd never say them directly to the kid face to face for a lot of them.
How does this guy think bullying in real life works? Yes, you would. If you're the bully and they're the bully, until eventually, I guess, like, eventually, I guess as the story goes, somebody eventually stands up to the bully and the bully stops bullying them because they're like, oh, this kid will punch me in the face. Well, if you're doing it on Facebook and you got to see him at school the next day, maybe that accelerates the process. The kid stands up for themselves sooner. I don't know.
I mean, hopefully.
So, what we call middle school in the United States, grades 6, 7, and 8, roughly ages 11 to 13. This is when bullying peaks. Around 7th grade is when bullying peaks. And these are very difficult developmental years, especially for girls. Their bodies are changing. They're insecure. They're being judged by their looks, by their breast size. But, it's such a difficult time for girls. And that's right when we introduce this crazy thing where everyone can say anything about anyone, often anonymously. And you take all the difficulties of adolescence, especially for girls, and you multiply them by 10. Oh, and then let's add in strangers. You can talk to strangers without your parents knowing. And, with all these platforms, they start off lovely. They start off fun. They start off playful. But any system you create, any ecosystem you create, unless you have an incredibly elaborate, evolving immune system, any system is going to be taken over by parasites, viruses, and exploiters. And so, for example, I'm just so horrified. One thing I learned about, I was in the UK, is the rapid growth of sextortion. I'd heard about it for years, but apparently there's a Nigerian gang, the Yahoo Boys, and the trick, that strangers can talk to your kids, and they do this to boys because boys are stupid enough sometimes to send a naked photo. If a beautiful girl says, let's swap photos, and she's been flirting with them for a couple of days, boys are stupid enough or gullible enough or desperate enough to do it. And the instant they send that photo, this person in the criminal gang says, now I've got everything I need to ruin your life. You have 30 minutes to send me $500 or I will ruin your life. I know all your contacts. I'm going to send this photo to everyone. I know where you live. And so, this is the idea that we're exposing boys to.
This actually did happen to a friend of mine. And he called me and asked me for advice. And it is very sad that this happens. And yes, this is a huge problem, and it's a problem we haven't dealt with. So, he's spot on this part.
So
the best advice you can give someone is like, don't pay, because that'll just make it worse. And just deal with the fallout. Have try to prepare them if there is fallout, which oftentimes there's not, but sometimes they go through with it and they send the photo, and then you just deal with that.
You go, yeah, that's me naked.
Yep.
That's I don't it's been probably since before the pandemic that I've ever sent any nude photos to anyone on Grindr and stuff because of what we do here, right?
Yep.
I've had people stop talking to me, and I'm like, well, all right. I mean, fucking whatever. This is Grindr. I fucking hit you up. You would have the opportunity to see my dick. You just have to do it in person. What the fuck?
Who not only can sex.
Luckily, all the naked pictures I've ever sent were when I was like super cut.
22 suicides of boys.
So if they spread around, you know,
which means there's probably hundreds of.
Not too bad.
Which means there are tens of thousands who are being sextorted and having their lives ruined. So the idea that in the most vulnerable, difficult transition from child to adult, we say, how about if you could all say things about anyone and you can be exploited by predators and you get these TikTok challenges urging you to do stupid things like kick people's legs out while they're jumping so they fall on their head. I mean, crazy, crazy stuff. So we're not going to burn the technology, but we need to delay it. Yeah. You know, we can't be raising kids.
Yeah, I do agree with him on this point. Like, I think it would be good if like kids just weren't allowed on social media.
Right.
And I know there's the rule about like you have to be 13 to join Facebook, but like A, that's not enforced, and B, that's too low.
Right. I think like short of that, like the thing he was talking about with the sextortion, it's, you know, it's probably an uncomfortable conversation to have with a fucking 13-year-old boy, right? But
yep.
Be like, look, I guess you're on Instagram and shit now, so don't send anybody naked pictures of yourself. First of all, they're probably not who they say they are, but secondly, I don't want to deal with the fallout from that. You don't want to deal with the fallout from that. Just don't do that. But that's a weird conversation to have with a 13-year-old, and it's certainly a more appropriate conversation and easier to have probably for both parties if the person's 16, right? Like,
yeah, but I think you also need to express that, like, if that happens to your kid, that you wouldn't be mad at them.
Right.
Because, like, there are several cases, absolutely tragic cases, of kids taking their own lives because of this. You know, someone attempted to sextort them and they took their own lives. And that is incredibly sad. And, you know, it kind of has to be this new lesson that we teach kids that it's okay if that happens. Like, it's not going to be the end of your life. It might suck for a while, but it's not going to be the end of your life. You're going to get over it. You're going to get through it. Like, to try and avoid that extremely tragic situation where, you know, this will happen to a kid and they'll think my life is over now.
Right. I don't know. I'm not a parent. I don't give parenting advice, but you know, like, I guess like the advice would have to be to just fucking lean into it though, right? Like, to just be like, that's me naked. Please don't share that around. I'm underage. What you're doing is illegal.
Yep.
For children.
And John, one of the things that is the origin story of Triggernometry is our concern about people's being
if there's anything good about the like AI generated nudes, it's that now you can just claim that whatever nude is being shared around of you, you can just say, oh, that's AI generated.
Yeah,
I never took that photo.
For children.
And John, one of the things that is the origin story of Triggernometry is our concern about people's being prevented from speaking their mind, restriction of speech. And also it's clear from the way that social media operates that I worry about AI as well, in the sense that AI is learning about human beings from social media effectively and from online communication, which we all know is not how people actually are,
right?
Is how people actually communicate. And one of the reasons is what...
Well, no, it is part of how people are, and it's one of the ways people actually communicate.
Formative.
Yep.
So is there a way to make online communication more human?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think the telephone did an amazing job of that. When the telephone came in, it connected everyone in a good way. And I'm sure there were people at the time who had some objection, but overall, we've seen the telephone as a boon when you connect people directly. And I think when Facebook first came out, many people saw it as a boon. There was no news feed. It was just, here's my page. I can put up pictures and I connect. You're my friend. I connect to you. So in theory, social media could be beneficial, but they all, especially once Facebook developed the advertising-driven business model, where now it's not about not giving you a platform by which you can talk with your friends. It's now about how do I keep your eyes on the sites that I can sell more ads to my customers, who are the advertisers. The users are not the customers. So I think,
Sir, that's how television works.
so, again, I get everyone has an idea for how to do a better online.
Well, giving him the benefit of the doubt, I think he means like no, he didn't say this, but one bad thing about this model is it benefits if you drive engagement.
And engagement usually means enragement.
Yes, because that is the best way to drive engagement, is to make someone angry or make someone sad. That's the best way to get them to comment on something, to get them to react to something. And that really is there are so many problems with that. It drives toxic behavior and it drives radicalization.
Right, but to be fair, like and the newspapers used to have a similar ethos, right? If it bleeds, it leads.
Yeah.
Like there's a similar, like it obviously wasn't happening at the fucking, like in milliseconds, because the newspaper only came out once a day. Some newspapers had a morning edition and an evening edition, right? But I mean, this is just an acceleration of a problem in media that's always existed, right? The local news isn't ever going to tell you about somebody who didn't get shot.
Yep.
Everyone has an idea for how to do a better online form of interaction, and I'm so sick of it. So I say, maybe for over 18s, yeah. For adults, let's have some better platforms drive out the bad platforms. But you know what? For 12, 13, 14, 15-year-olds, no, just get rid of all of it. Get rid of all of it.
I do agree with him on this point.
What we have to do is give kids back normal human childhood. So a very important point I'm trying to make to parents. Everyone focuses on the phone stuff. You can't just take away the phones and the iPad.
But he's also kind of implying that this is the only problem, that, once you do that, as he said, give them back a normal childhood. That's not the only problem. Like, this is just one of a subset of problems going on right now.
And I don't even know, like a normal
Yeah.
think about a normal childhood in 1900 versus 1950, or let's say 1980 versus 2000 versus 2020, right? Only the 2000 to 2020 had this problem, but you look at a 1980 childhood and a 2000 childhood, and those are going to be dramatically different too.
Mm-hmm.
So,
but one of the biggest issues with childhood today is he touched on it earlier, saying there's a lot of hopelessness, but I feel like a lot of that is about how shit we've set up our economic structure.
And even
right?
if the kids don't have words for it, they kind of know that shit's fucked up, right?
Yeah. And the parents too, because it's hard to parent when you have to be at your job 12 hours a day. Your jobs, plural.
Childhood. So a very important point I'm trying to make to parents. Everyone focuses on the phone stuff. You can't just take away the phones and the iPads and all the technology from your 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12-year-olds. You have to give them back something else, which is play. I'm sure you.
So who the fuck 6-year-old has their own device? They have those kids iPads where they can play games and shit, and those are cool, but those aren't really an iPad. I wouldn't give a 6-year-old an iPad. They'd break it. They'd find a new and interesting way to break the iPad that you've never heard of.
Yeah, that is bad parenting. Giving a 6-year-old just an unrestricted iPad.
Right. I mean, if you got to cook dinner and whatever, and the kid's bored and there's nothing on TV or whatever, you're like, here, what do you want to watch? And you hand him the iPad. And you fucking take it back 30 minutes later, right? You're like, no, that's my iPad. I let you borrow it because I'm...
Yeah.
Right?
No 6-year-old should have a smartphone. And I don't think that that's common.
Okay, fond memories. Go back to when you were 8, 9, 10. Mm-hmm. Think of a fond memory. Say it. What do you see yourself doing?
Granddad's farm, playing, swimming in the river, being
with Granddad. Who are you with?
No, with cousins.
Right. Other kids. Yeah. That's right. And this is exciting. It's thrilling. You take risks. Mm-hmm. You figure out how to swing. You throw a vine or a rope and you swing and you take risks and you might get hurt. That turns out to be really important. It's very important that kids kids need to sort of size up the risk, and each one has to adjust it to the level that he needs that day. And if you let kids do that, they will occasionally get hurt. But at the end of the process, they really can judge risk. And what we did beginning in the 90s, because the backstory here, it's not just about the phones. The backstory is we got rid of the play-based childhood. In America, we freaked out about child abduction, but even in the UK, where you didn't have much of it, you still freaked out and lost trust in each other. And
yeah, that stranger danger shit.
Yeah.
But the real problem with the stranger danger shit wasn't like, I mean, okay, maybe you don't let your kids go out to play, but I don't think that happened. I think the real problem with the stranger danger shit is it was like a little bit of a sleight of hand in a way, because that wasn't who was going to hurt your kids, right? It's not like that didn't happen, but that's not who's going to hurt your kids. Keep an eye on who's around them. Keep an eye on who's not a stranger.
Yep.
About traffic and said, no, we're not letting our kids out. So what kids need is a play-based childhood. That's what they had until the 1990s or early 2000s. And instead, they, at the same time that we were locking them up and saying, no, you can't go outside unsupervised. Oh, but here's a personal computer and, it has a dial-up modem and look, you can play video games and, oh, you can talk to your friends. And so in the 90s and early 2000s, kids were shifting over to virtual interactions.
So the only problem, when he says kids, I feel like he should be much more specific here, because in the late 90s and early 2000s, the fucking rave scene and underground music blew up, and people were sneaking out their parents' house to go to the rave and shit before they were like, who is he talking about? Who is he talking about? Oh, what? Oh. Well, everybody, the show's recorded live. My Discord wasn't on streamer mode.
Health didn't collapse then, actually. It was actually pretty stable in the 90s, especially in the 2000s, pretty stable. It's only once they make the jump from flip phones to smartphones, that's when you go from playing a bunch of video games at home on the family computer to I have the entire internet with me all the time and I can be flirting with strangers who claim to be sexy women. You get the craziness once you get this all the time. That's why.
So does he think that there weren't people flirting with each other on like AOL chat rooms, like when you had to do dial up?
Yeah, that happened.
That's the key period when everything collapsed.
But
and John,
sextortion is a fairly new phenomenon. I mean, the phenomenon isn't that new, but the level to which it happens now is new.
Right. I mean, sextortion is it's common in spies and like tradecraft, right? Because you're fucking honey trap, right? But now it's not like, now they're doing it to like teenage boys or whatever. But like this is like, but the idea that like that somebody who isn't who they claim they're going to be, who clearly they claim they are, might be flirting with you in a chat environment. That's a pretty old one. On the internet, no one knows that you're a dog. We talked about that a long time ago, right? It wasn't about that, but that's sort of the idea, is that like nobody really knows who you are on the internet.
Yeah.
One of the things that I think is inevitably something we have to be honest about is, even if right now we did everything that you're saying, we still have one, maybe two generations who've been raised in this way, and there's nothing that can be done about it.
So 2 points on different sides. One, I do suspect
I'm sorry, what?
Crucial period of brain rewiring. I do expect that Gen Z will be less than it could be permanently. I think that Gen Z is not, even if we look at them in 30 or 40 years, my prediction is they'll be less successful than they would have been if they'd had normal human childhoods. So,
well, fuck this guy.
Well,
like Gen Z seems all right.
So the problem with this is that there's nothing to, like, it's a counterfactual, right? Because we don't have another Gen Z to compare this to where the phenomenon he's talking about didn't happen. So he's like, well, I think this, and it's like, well, that's great. Nobody can really prove you right or wrong. Good job, dude. Fucking academic work. Fucking fantastic. They were saying this shit about the millennials too. I think it's just once they realized the millennials were 40, they said, "Oh, we got to try Gen Z now." What's the next? Is it Gen Alpha? They're gonna be saying this shit about, and when the fucking Gen Z all turns 40.
I think they're already saying it about Gen Alpha.
Great, fantastic. But like, they're doing a thing that isn't new. Right, the thing they're doing. He's like, I have this novel idea that the kids are screwed up.
But like, isn't Gen Z like? aren't the oldest of them already like approaching 30?
Yeah, I mean they're 20 years younger than me, essentially.
Yeah.
Effect on Gen Z.
But that's a tragedy, John.
Oh, this is the greatest destruction of human capital in human history. We've taken an entire generation globally. Certainly,
I'm sorry. Okay, hold on. Wait a minute. There's been a lot of destruction. We'll leave the frame. We'll leave the problematic of calling people capital aside. There have been things that happen in history where we destroyed generations of people. World War II, for example.
Yep.
Vietnam. World War II, they called it shell shock, but it was PTSD. People came back with horrible PTSD from World War II, as well you would expect they would. World War I. Slavery. That's the human capital becomes a much more problematic framing if we talk about slavery, right? But there have been horrible things that have happened to whole generations of people or whole different demographic groups of people over time. Giving everybody a cell phone probably ain't even in the top 50.
Yep.
From the developing world. But in the developed countries, we've taken an entire generation. We've taken away what they need biologically to develop, risk exposure, hanging out time. We've taken all that away and given them something unnatural. So yes, this is, I believe, the greatest destruction of human capital in human history. I could be wrong. I'm making an argument that this is what has happened. But now on the positive side, even though there'll be a difference, I'm a social scientist, so if there's going to be an average difference, I'm going to talk about and say this is incredibly important. But it doesn't mean that each kid in Gen Z is condemned to a life of anxiety, because I
think the other thing that's going on here, and I don't know how big a factor it is, but probably because of some people in my generation and a lot of people at your generation, the millennials, there's been destigmatization of things like anxiety and other mental health issues. People are more willing to talk about them.
Yeah.
There's been a destigmatization of being a person with autism. Like I don't even think anything about, like, I don't know what I thought about it when I was 20, but it probably wasn't what I think about it now. Somebody's like, "Oh, I'm autistic." I'm like, "Okay."
Yep. And what I lived through was essentially a destigmatization of ADHD. When I was a kid, when I was a very like third grade, I was diagnosed with ADHD, and at the time, that was during the big bubble of ADHD diagnoses, where South Park made that episode about everyone being on Ritalin. It was stigmatized, not to the same extent that it was before, where basically it went undiagnosed and people with ADHD were just kind of labeled as like the weird kids.
Or problematic students. Like, even if they were had good social skills or whatever, they were problematic students.
Yeah, but then we developed medication for it. People started to learn how to deal with someone with ADHD. Of the jobs that I've had, several of them have basically worked around a lot of my issues with organization and time management, and to a really beneficial degree. Like, I was able to produce a lot more because of that in the jobs that I worked at. Whereas, 30 years ago, if I was an adult during that time, when I was in third grade, if I had been an adult at that time, it would have been very different. Like, there were basically no companies that would work around you having ADHD. They probably just wouldn't hire you if they knew about it. And if they didn't know about it, and you started saying, I need a little bit more hands-on management because I'm really bad at time management, they'd been like, you know what? We can't really do that. You're gonna have to walk out that door.
Malleable up through 25. And even after that, we can all learn new thinking patterns and new behavior patterns. And so what's most exciting to me is the results I'm getting in my class at NYU. I teach a course called Flourishing. It began as a course just for MBA students in 2014, like teaching them how to have a more flourishing career. But once it became clear in 2019, just before COVID, that our undergrads are really depressed, just like undergrads everywhere. And so I volunteered to convert the course over to a longer, deeper course for undergraduate students.
I think they're probably depressed because they see how much fucking they're like, the student loan is how much?
Committed to sophomores. I want to get them pretty early in their time at Stern, at NYU Stern. And so they're all about 19 years old. And the point of the course is to make them smarter, stronger, and more sociable. And smarter, I show them that.
Oh no, this is like a pickup artistry, but a fucking college course.
15 young people have had essentially zero attention. You don't have any attention to do anything. It's all sucked up by your devices. So if you have no attention, you really can't accomplish anything in life. Now, do you want that? Okay, none of you.
I disagree. As someone with an attention deficit disorder,
You have $100 of attention every day, and you've given all of it away, so you have none to spend. Okay, now, let's change that. Look at your notifications. Look at how much time you spend on YouTube, on TikTok. One of my students was spending 6 hours a day just watching TikTok, just TikTok. And then with all the other stuff, we're up to 10, 12, 14 hours a day. So, but they get amazing results when they shut off almost all notifications. I show them just shut off, leave on Uber and a few others where, yes, I give Uber permission to interrupt my attention, to tell me your car will be here in 3 minutes. Like, yes, that's worth doing. But, do I give some newspaper permission to interrupt me to say, Prince Harry says this, or, major weather pattern in Brazil? Like, no. So when I help them.
I actually think this is really good advice.
But I mean, that's just like, you know how my phone doesn't really notify me of shit.
And that's good, right?
Yeah. But I don't know if you need a college level course. You know what I mean? You turn off your fucking notifications. Like I probably spend more time. I'm like extremely online, but as a result of being extremely online, I understand that, that I don't need to have my phone tell me that something crazy is happening on the internet. I can just go find it myself. Right. Like, what the fuck?
Yeah, I
understand risk.
Like I would assume there's more to his course than just turning off your notifications, but I think this is actually really good advice. Like kind of dissecting which apps are allowed to give you notifications is a good thing. And especially if an app like abuses that privilege. Like I gave Threads the ability to give me notifications, and you know what it did? Like 2 hours later, it was like, hey, this was picked just for you. And it was some random account that like, I don't follow. It's like, if you're going to do that, you don't get to notify me anymore.
Right. I think that, I don't know. From what I've gathered from this guy, because I've listened to this guy talk to a lot of people about this. I don't know if his class is different than what he says in interviews, but if his class is about what he says in interviews, I think that his class would be better suited to boomers who don't know how to turn off the notifications on their phone.
True.
Understand that they need to take risks. This is one thing that's so exciting to me, is that Gen Z totally recognizes the problem. They're not in denial. They want to take risks. They want to grow. And so if you lay out a path and you say, here's the challenge, and then they do it together. So it's a very...
Didn't he just shit all over Gen Z saying they're permanently damaged?
If a class of kids or if a group of friends or if a school, if they do it together, they make amazing progress.
Well, this is where I was going with it, and you were excited by the idea of this being a more collectivist generation. I have some questions about that.
Yes,
but
there's a dark side.
Well, quite, and more broadly, I guess where I was going is, even though I
collectivism is a dark side to him,
is magnificent and helping them, and I think younger kids, there are conscious parents who are trying to mitigate some of the consequence of this. I was sitting in a bar in Florida the other day talking to some guys next to me, and they were saying, oh, you've got a 2-year-old, what are you doing? And I was sort of, well, he's not getting any screens because my wife is a screen Nazi and I fully support her.
Too.
And this guy was saying, oh, really? That's it. He seemed shocked. And he was like, oh, my 12-year-old's been banned from TikTok for posting videos of him fighting with other kids. So I guess what I'm getting at is, I'd be curious to hear, given that I suspect the mass of this generation isn't going to be re-educated, so to speak, in a Jonathan Haidt brilliant course, what are some of the social and societal trends that we are likely to see, especially when inevitably these kids start hitting the workplaces and start having influence and power and so on? What's going to happen then?
So up next is an ad in the middle of their show. So this is a good place for us to end the podcast. I have some thoughts on this, and some of them come from what we heard here, but some of this does come from having heard Jonathan Haidt on a lot of shows. I think a lot of people who have him on haven't done a lot of research about him, and I'm not talking about Constantine and Non-Oliver, because if they looked into him, the more they looked into him, the more they'd like him. His book, The Coddling of the American Mind, was just another one of these college kids or pussies books, right? That's just kids these days are fucking blah blah blah. And it's like if you write that book, that college kids are pussies or whatever, and then you write this book about social media, it gets kind of hard to take this person seriously, because he already wrote a book saying these people are idiots, they're overreacting to everything. You know what I'm saying? It doesn't work in series.
Yep.
And I'd be interested to see like what the research on this looks like what are his sources, because he's pretty clearly ideologically driven, even if we can't tell it based on the things we see him saying. It's when you look at the kind of the dipshit tree of people he's associated with, he clearly is coming from a particular point of view. And I'd be interested to see what research he's citing on this stuff, if any, or if this is all vibes based, because I don't think that this stuff has been around long enough and it's not open enough. I don't think that there's a big body of research on it at this time, just because the thing that you would have to research is like somebody else's trade secret. Like Instagram ain't going to open their shit up for you to do research on what the fuck's going on Instagram, because that is not in their interest.
And it's also kind of impossible to have a control group.
Right. And unless maybe you compare them to like Amish kids. Right. But that's then you're comparing apples to Amish.
Yeah.
And people are probably doing good work. In fact, I know people doing work in the social sciences about this. I don't think I'm speaking out of turn when I say that Professor Q and Chris Kavanaugh from Decoding the Gurus, are looking into particularly parasociality and Twitch. And that's going to include talking about a lot of young people. And they're doing work on this. And that's going to be interesting work. But it's going to be preliminary, and knowing both of those people, they're going to tell you that it's preliminary. that it's early days for this kind of research. And Jonathan Haidt is talking about it like the fucking fix is in. He's talking about it in an authoritative way, as if we have all this information and we know for a fact the things that he's saying are true and driven by social media specifically. And you and I came up with, I just thought of somebody born in 1998 and thought of the fucking shit world they fucking live in. My God, at least I got 20-ish years where the world wasn't hot garbage. I mean,
yeah, emphasis on the word hot.
Right.
Yeah, because I was talking to someone the other day and they were like, oh man, it felt like this summer was the hottest it's ever been. And I was like, that's because it was. And next summer will be hotter. And then the next one hotter after that. Every summer going forward will be hotter than the last. And like this summer was the hottest it's ever been and the coldest it's ever gonna be.
Right. And people,
and the kids know that.
Right. But by about fucking 12 or 13, they may even know about it before, but by 12 or 13, they're probably intimately aware of it and even know some facts about it. Maybe they know more about it than I do, right?
Yeah. So like doomerism is popular among the kids,
but it's also rational.
But like for good reason, because like we're literally destroying the planet. I mean, we're destroying the human habitableness of the planet. Habitability.
When I first started streaming more regularly on Twitch, somebody came in. They appeared to be like younger, and they were like, "You're the oldest doomer I've ever seen."
Yeah,
I was like, I'll take that as a compliment. I don't know. I'll take that as a compliment. Well, that's been the podcast. We're not watching the rest of this because I find Jonathan Haidt to be very, very annoying to listen to. But if people want more context on this, somebody did mention earlier that Kara Swisher interviewed him, and she kind of asked him some tough questions that kind of line up with some of the things that we were saying. mostly, I do remember some of it. Mostly, she was just asking, like, is there enough research on this? And, like, you know, you're making some pretty strong statements here, and I'm not sure that the research is there to back it up. And then she says, but I'm a journalist. You're the expert. Where is the research there to back it up? Which is a fucking little fucking twist in the knife. Like, you're the expert. So I do recommend listening to that. I don't always love Kara Swisher, but when she talks to these people that think they fucking know everything, it's fantastic because she's a mean lesbian. So, mean lesbian versus person who thinks they know everything. Boy, howdy, is that my shit. Anyway, HK, you want to read the show out?
All right. Thank you for tuning in. This has been the Intellectual Dollar Tree. We do this show Wednesday at 7 p.m. Pacific on twitch.tv/Echoplex, Echoplex Media. We also do other shows. You can find out more information about all our shows at echoplexmedia.com. And if you'd like to support us, you can do that on Patreon at patreon.com/Echoplex or at eplex.store, where you can get all of our merch as well. If you're listening live, stick around for after the song when we change the color of the lights and the contents of our drinks. And here is Boomers by Periscope, an apt song.